What if your team drafted you, hyped you up on national TV, and then when the lights were the brightest, quietly pulled the rug out from under you? That's the question swirling around Shador Sanders right now. And it's not coming from fringe fans or angry internet trolls, it's coming straight from NFL Hall of Famer Randy Moss, who just called out the Cleveland Browns in a way no one expected. This isn't just about a bad play call. It's about power struggles behind closed doors, decisions that don't add up, and a future franchise quarterback who might be getting set up to fail before he's even had a chance to shine. And if you're thinking this sounds dramatic, hold that thought. Because what happened during Sanders' NFL debut has seasoned analysts asking if his own coaching staff actually wants him to succeed. The Browns say they're in evaluation mode. They say they're giving their rookie a fair shot. But their actions on the field and the silence off of it tell a different story. So here's the real play-by-play. What actually went down during Shador's debut, why legends like Randy Moss are sounding the alarm, and how the Browns could be sleepwalking into yet another QB disaster. Let's break it down. Shador Sanders had just thrown the kind of pass that turns heads around the entire league. A perfect strike, dropped right into the receiver's hands, a deep bomb that showcased everything scouts said he couldn't do. Poise in the pocket, effortless arm strength, and touch on a deep ball that not many rookies can even attempt, let alone connect on. The result? A huge gain down to the 2-yard line, the kind of play that's supposed to become a highlight when you talk about a young quarterback's breakout moment. Fans were on their feet. The energy on the sideline shifted. Even the defense-hardened veterans like Myles Garrett were fired up about what they'd just seen. And then, something strange happened. Instead of letting Sanders finish the drive he engineered, that he earned, the Browns pulled him off the field. Not due to injury, not because of a timeout, but because the coaching staff decided to switch to the Wildcat formation. Not once, not twice, twice in a row. Imagine the message that sends. You do everything right. You move your team down the field against a top-tier defense in your second NFL start. You set up a moment where you could score your first official NFL touchdown, and instead, you're sent to the sidelines to watch someone else run it in, strip it down, and that's not just frustrating, it's insulting. Was it strategy? Was it mistrust? Or was it something else entirely? To the average viewer, it might not seem like a big deal. They scored, right? So what's the issue? But football isn't just math. It's emotion, momentum, and messaging. And pulling your rookie quarterback in the red zone after a play that could have defined his night says everything about the relationship between this coaching staff and their young QB. Now, here's where things start to sting. This isn't some late-round flyer quarterback getting a casual look. We're talking about a highly scrutinized, high-profile draft pick being evaluated as a potential long-term starter. Every snap matters. Every decision by his coaching staff can either build confidence or chip away at it. And in that critical moment, the Browns pulled Sanders not because he failed, but because they didn't trust him to finish something he started. That isn't smart game management. That's placing limitations on a player before he's been allowed to prove himself. Even room temperature analysis sees it. But when Randy Moss, a Hall of Fame receiver who's seen every kind of QB there is, goes on national television and calls it out as sabotage, you know you're not dealing with a knee-jerk reaction. You're dealing with a deeper issue. Moss didn't just say the play call was bad. He questioned whether the people inside the Browns' own locker room even want Shador Sanders to succeed. Let that sink in. Because that's not just about X's and O's, that's about trust, culture, intent. If you're trying to rebuild a franchise, and let's be clear, Cleveland has been trying for almost 2 decades, then you need to show unity around your most important draft pick. You don't shelter him from success, you don't sideline him when he's got momentum, and you definitely don't make him watch from the bench while someone else cashes in on his hardest-earned drive. This kind of move doesn't just affect Sanders, it echoes through the locker room. Veterans see it, rookie receivers and linemen see it. When coaches yank a guy after a near touchdown, the signal is loud and clear: we don't trust you in the red zone. And if you're trying to develop a future franchise leader, that's the last message you should send. Now, let's talk context. The Browns came into this game with a 2-9 record. They're not competing for playoff seeding. They're not in a win-now situation. This is evaluation mode, plain and simple. Every game, every series, every snap should be treated like a diagnostic tool for the future. That play should have been a moment that said, "We believe in this kid. Let's see what he does when it's all on the line." Instead, it said the opposite. Worse yet, when the Wildcat actually worked and they punched it in without him, it papered over the issue tactically while deepening it emotionally. The scoreboard says 6. But inside the locker room, that's a trust deficit. And that's far more dangerous. It would be one thing if Sanders had made mistakes throughout the night, if he were turning the ball over, making wild decisions, playing like someone who was overwhelmed by the speed of the game. But that wasn't the case. Outside of a single interception, Sanders played smart, efficient football. He protected the ball. He delivered when it counted. He grew into the moment. And that's exactly why pulling him stung so much. When you evaluate a rookie quarterback, you're not just looking at clean stats. You're watching to see how they command an offense, how they bounce back from pressure, how they respond to adversity, and most of all, how they handle momentum. You don't rip that away over a gimmick formation, especially not twice. It's not about whether the Wildcat worked, it's about what the Wildcat replaced. A pivotal learning moment, a shot at building confidence, and a chance for your rookie QB to take control in the red zone. That's development. You can't simulate that on the sidelines. Football is built on trust, reps, and rhythm. Shedeur had all three in his grip until the Browns chose to hand it off to someone else. So what does that mean for Sanders' future with the team? And is Randy Moss right? Are there people inside the Browns building who don't want him to succeed? Because if that's even partially true, then pulling him on the 2-yard line wasn't just a bad call. It could be the first crack in something much bigger. Randy Moss didn't mince words. He looked straight into the camera and said what a lot of people had been thinking but were too afraid to say, "I don't know if everybody in that building wants him to win." That's not a casual observation. That's a nuclear-level accusation, coming from someone who knows how locker rooms work. Hall of Fame players don't throw out statements like that unless they've seen something that seriously doesn't sit right. So now the question isn't about play calling anymore. It's about intent. Let's not sugarcoat this. NFL teams don't usually sabotage their own quarterbacks. But what happens when the internal culture is broken? What happens when a young player threatens the status quo, either by how he plays or how he carries himself? Because now, fans aren't just asking why the Browns pulled Shedeur after a game-changing throw, they're asking something far more unsettling. Is this team unified behind him? Or are there people in the building who want him to fail quietly? It wouldn't be the first time a front office said all the right things to the media while quietly pushing a different agenda behind the scenes. Publicly, the Browns say they're in evaluation mode. They say they want to give Shedeur a fair shot, that they're building for the future, that he's one of their guys. But what we're seeing on the field, it's not matching the PR script. Not even close. When a rookie quarterback makes a signature throw and immediately gets pulled, that's not building confidence. That's cutting the legs out from under him while pretending to hold his hand. So let's zoom out. Why would anyone inside the Browns facility not want Shador Sanders to succeed? There are a few reasons, none of them flattering. Shedeur wasn't their pick. Even though the Browns invested in him, reports suggest that not everyone in the building was fully aligned on drafting him. The coaching staff didn't unanimously co-sign the pick. Some saw it as a front office move. And when decisions come from above, resentment has a sneaky way of showing up in the way players are developed or ignored. Personality politics. Let's be honest, Shador Sanders is not the kind of player you can control in the traditional sense. He's outspoken, he's confident, he has a brand. He's the son of NFL royalty and carries himself like it. Some coaches, especially old-school ones, hate that. Not because it affects the game, but because it challenges their authority. They see swag as ego, confidence as attitude. They want their quarterback to earn it the hard way, even if he's already more prepared than others they've handed the starting job to without hesitation. Internal power struggles. Behind the scenes, NFL teams are filled with politics. Assistant coaches want more influence. Offensive coordinators want to protect their scheme. General managers want to prove their guy was the right call. If Shedeur wins and thrives, he changes the internal dynamics of the franchise. That means someone else loses leverage. Coaches and execs don't always root for the same things. Sometimes, the louder the hype is outside the building, the more threatened people feel inside it. And when Randy Moss says, "I don't know if everyone wants him to win," he's not pulling that idea out of thin air. He's seen it before. We've all seen organizations pretend to support a young quarterback, all while creating an environment where failure becomes almost inevitable. Add it all up, and you start seeing the puzzle more clearly. They managed his game plan conservatively. That's understandable for a rookie. But even when he played well, even when he made elite throws, they held him back. At no point did we see the coaching staff truly build on his in-game success. There was no aggression when he got hot, no trust when he found rhythm. Which brings us to this harsh truth. If you're not letting someone succeed, you're subtly letting them fail. Now, it's important to say this clearly. This isn't a confirmed conspiracy. There's no smoking gun, no leaked email saying bench Shedeur. But NFL saboteurs don't use smoking guns, they use hesitation, discouragement, mixed messages. And once you start reading between the lines, they're not hard to spot. So here's what this looks like to a player. You prep all week, you show growth, you protect the football, you deliver under pressure, you finally have your moment and they pull you. Not for a mistake, not for safety reasons, but for a gimmick play, twice. It's the kind of message that says, sure, we'll let you dress for the game, but we're not sure we want you deciding how it ends. That's not how you build a leader, that's how you break one. And it's not paranoid to think that actions like this create long-term damage. Quarterbacks are built on rhythm, routine, and trust. If the people leading the team can't trust their own guy with 2 yards and a red-hot drive, are they really preparing to build around him? The fans see this. The media sees this. Randy Moss definitely sees it. So what happens next? Because this story isn't about one drive anymore. That moment inside the 5-yard line was just the first signal. The real question is whether the Browns will pull back the curtain and give Sanders full control of his development, or if they'll keep doing just enough to say, "We tried," while never fully backing him when it truly counts. We all know what a lack of trust looks like in football. Now, it's just a matter of whether the Browns admit it or double down on the silence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. No one in most sports media circles wants to admit. Swagger is only okay when it comes from the right kind of quarterback. And apparently, Shador Sanders isn't that kind. He shows up to the game with a flashy wristwatch. He looks into the camera with that signature smirk. He talks about being legendary. Not good, not humble, not just taking it one game at a time. Legendary. And from the moment he said it, the reactions started rolling in. This kid's too cocky. He hasn't earned that attitude. Who does he think he is? Let's ask a better question. Why does a young quarterback having confidence make people so uncomfortable? Because here's the crazy part, swagger is almost expected from other rookie QBs. When a young, fiery quarterback bangs his chest, screams at the sideline, or calls himself him, the media eats it up. They call it leadership. They say he's got that dog in him. They turn it into highlight reels. But when Shador Sanders brings the exact same energy, suddenly it's a problem. Suddenly, he needs to tone it down. Suddenly, we're talking about humility, about professionalism, about fitting into the culture. And if you don't feel that double standard yet, keep watching. This isn't about whether Shador's confident. He is. That's no secret. He's been playing with cameras on him his entire life, from being Coach Prime's son, to starring at Jackson State, to handling pressure at Colorado, to now trying to carve out a legacy in the NFL. He's been a public figure since high school, and he's embraced it. But there's a strange pattern in how that confidence is covered. Whether it's the watch, the walk, or a post-game quote that doesn't immediately show the right kind of humility, it all gets reframed not as leadership, not as edge, but as cockiness, even arrogance. And once the narrative shifts, it sticks. Headlines stop talking about his arm strength or how rare it is to throw a 50-yard dime in your second start. Instead, they shift to tone policing, overanalyzing every quote, every gesture, every appearance. Is he too flashy? Is he focused enough? Does he really love the game? And yet, when quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield or even a young Joe Burrow show that same confidence, when they pull up in designer suits, talk their shtot after a win, or declare they're gonna change the game, they're celebrated. They're called dogs. They're called gritty. People say, that's the fire you need. Nobody questions whether the locker room can handle it. Nobody says they're too into their image to focus on football. But with Shedeur, it's different. That same charisma becomes evidence that he's not mature, that he's too into himself, that he needs to learn how to act like a professional. Let's be real for a second. This isn't just about football. It's about perception. It's about how some quarterbacks are allowed to have personality, while others are expected to fall in line and stay quiet. Especially black quarterbacks, especially those who come into the league already owning their worth. And Shador Sanders didn't come in asking for permission. He arrived like he belongs. that's powerful. But for certain people, certain media voices, maybe even some folks inside the Browns organization, that quiet confidence feels like a threat. So it becomes a target. And we saw that almost immediately after his first career start. The media didn't start with, "Look how he avoided pressure," or "He kept the team in it against an elite defense." Nope, the noise began with how he spoke after the game. Specifically, that he didn't immediately thank the defense. And just like that, a totally valid post-game reaction turned into a so-called red flag about me-first mentality. Now let's stop and think for a second. How many times have we heard veteran QBs say, I, in post-game? Aaron Rodgers? All the time. Tom Brady? Constantly. No one questions their mindsets. They're seen as generals guys who demand more of themselves and everyone around them. The media calls that leadership. But with Shedeur, he says he wants to be legendary, and people act like he just insulted the league. It's not just overreaction, it's selective criticism. It's a pattern we've seen before. Guys like Cam Newton faced it. Lamar Jackson faced it. And if you go back far enough, even Randall Cunningham faced it. Confidence plus culture equals controversy. That's the formula. And yet, here's what makes that narrative so dangerous. It chips away at how quarterbacks are perceived before they get a fair shot to perform. The conversation shifts from their skills to their vibe, from their stat line to their style. The target moves, and development becomes harder because perception starts to affect opportunity. So when people like Randy Moss raise the question, do they want him to win? This is part of what they mean. It's not that Shedeur isn't talented, it's that his entire presence challenges an old-school system that still decides who gets shaped into a starter and who gets quietly labeled a distraction. And if the Browns start buying into that media narrative, if they let outside noise shape inside decisions, then Shedeur is playing with a stacked deck before he ever gets to the line of scrimmage. Personality should never be confused for a problem. Swagger doesn't have to mean selfishness, and confidence doesn't hinder development. If anything, it fuels it. The real question isn't whether Shador Sanders is too confident for the NFL. It's whether the NFL and the Browns are too uncomfortable to let a quarterback like him succeed on his own terms. Let's talk about the post-game headline nobody can stop repeating. Shador Sanders finishes one of the most important outings of his professional life, poised, composed, and mostly turnover-free against one of the league's most punishing defenses. And what's the media talking about? Not the deep ball, not his pocket awareness, not his mental toughness in just his second NFL start. They're talking about a quote, a sentence, one moment in a post-game interview where Shedeur didn't immediately shower his defense with praise. Suddenly, that becomes the story. Shedeur doesn't lead the right way. He's not a team-first guy. Is he too much about himself? Let's be brutally honest. If this is the standard for criticism, then half the NFL's starting quarterbacks are in trouble. The double standard is glaring, and so is the exaggeration. Shedeur didn't call out teammates. He didn't blame anyone for the loss. He didn't shift accountability. He simply spoke candidly about wanting to be better and not feeling satisfied with his own performance. But because the praise for the defense didn't come in the first 10 seconds of his answer, we're labeling him arrogant? That's not analysis, that's cherry picking. Worse, it's pattern recognition for people who already came in wanting to find something wrong. Ask yourself this. Why is a young quarterback showing high expectations for himself being treated like a red flag? We've all heard veteran QBs, Rodgers, Brady, Fields, Herbert say, "I need to do more," or "We should have put up more points." And when they say it, sports media calls it leadership. They say it's about accountability and competitive fire. They call it QB DNA. But when Shador Sanders says the same thing, the tone shifts. It's no longer competitive, it's ego. It's no longer maturity, it's selfishness. You're telling me that after executing a conservative offense, staying calm under duress, literally leading the team within striking distance multiple times, the biggest takeaway was tone? It's almost like people are listening not to understand him, but to catch him saying something that fits their preferred narrative. And let's not pretend this is about that one quote. This wasn't an isolated media reaction. It was the continuation of a storyline that's been bubbling under the surface since Shedeur entered the NFL. Every move he makes, every time he shows confidence or speaks honestly, it gets filtered through a different lens. A harsher lens. The media did the same thing in college too. Remember how they covered him at Colorado? That same scrutiny followed him there. His watch, his interviews, his swagger, it always overshadowed his stats, his leadership, and his actual playmaking when people wanted it to. This isn't new. It's a cycle, and when this happens consistently, something subtle but damaging starts to happen. The public narrative detaches completely from the player's performance on the field. Now, every press conference becomes a trap. Every answer becomes potential fuel for a hit-piece headline. Every moment of honesty becomes a liability rather than a strength. That's not just unfair, it's exhausting. And here's the dangerous part, that outside pressure, it doesn't always stay outside. In organizations with weak leadership, media narratives start creeping into internal conversations. Staffers, execs, even assistant coaches start questioning the quarterback, not based on tape, not based on performance, but based on how he speaks in a press conference. It becomes about vibe instead of value. And that's how you derail a quarterback's development without ever actually saying it out loud. You start second-guessing him after one quote. You start managing him like he's volatile. You start treating personality like a risk factor, something to be contained instead of encouraged. And before you know it, your young QB becomes isolated not by behavior, but by perception. And perception is poison in the NFL, especially for rookie quarterbacks, especially when they don't fit the mold. So, reminder, this was Shedor's second ever NFL start. Not every veteran knows how to hack the perfect post-game soundbite. And even if they do, why should that matter more than how he played when it counted? Quarterbacks grow through experience. They learn through adversity. And yes, they evolve not just in how they play, but in how they lead. But none of that learning is possible when they're being judged by how they say things instead of what they actually do. Narratives are hard to shake once they're set. And this one? It's being built brick by brick, not by what's happening between the lines, but what's being manipulated between headlines. So the next time Shedeur steps to a microphone, the real question isn't whether he says the right PR-crafted response. It's whether people will actually listen or just wait for him to mess up again. Because right now, the media coverage of Shador Sanders isn't just critical, it's selectively critical. And that's not just blown coverage. It's blown credibility. When a team says they're just protecting their young quarterback, most fans nod in agreement. It's a reasonable thing to say, right? After all, no one wants to throw a rookie into the fire, especially not behind a struggling offensive line or against a relentless pass rush. But here's the truth people don't want to admit. There's a difference between protecting a quarterback and suffocating him. And based on what we've seen with Shador Sanders, the Browns might be doing more of the second than the first. From the first snap of his second NFL start, it was clear the game plan was designed to be safe. Painfully safe. Controlled throws within 5 yards. Screens, slants, dump-offs. The occasional rollout to buy him time. And basically nothing that would allow him to stretch the field until the one deep shot that ignited the sideline and then was immediately punished by getting pulled. Sure, he was facing a highly ranked defense. Max Crosby was practically living in the backfield. The O-line was banged up. The broadcast team even pointed out the mismatch in the trenches. So, yes, there's some logic to the conservative script. But let's not ignore the larger context here. The Browns were 2-9 heading into that game, 2 wins, 9 losses. They're not in playoff contention, not protecting a postseason run, and not trying to preserve the health of a franchise QB with a $200 million contract. This team is in evaluation mode, or at least they say they are. That's where the entire plan breaks down. If you're in development mode, trial mode, or rebuild mode, you're supposed to challenge players. You're supposed to test what they can really do. You let them make mistakes. You let them go through real football moments, 3rd and long, 4th and short, red zone reads. You give them the wheel, not just hand them the keys and then grab the steering wheel when you get scared. But that's exactly what seemed to happen with Shedeur. The moment things got interesting after he dropped that beautiful deep bomb inside the 5, it felt like the coaching staff panicked. Like they thought, uh-oh, this is getting real. Better yank him out before something goes wrong. That's not development, that's fear-based coaching. And it gets worse when you dig into what happened next. They scored on that Wildcat switch. Fine. But in doing so, they sent a very loud, very unspoken message to their quarterback. We can trust you to get us there, but we'll take it from here. That breeds uncertainty, not confidence. And let's be straight about what that costs. It's not just a lost touchdown for the stat sheet. It's a lost moment. A defining moment. That was an opportunity to build trust, not just with Shedeur, but within the entire locker room. Because when your QB executes a perfect drive against a dominant defense and then watches the next plays from the sideline, it's not just his trust that takes a hit, it's the whole team's. Football players feed off rhythm, off energy, off seeing their guy under center, commanding the moment. Coaches can't replicate that in a practice drill. You either build momentum in real time or you cut it mid-stride, like the Browns did that night. And here's where things start to feel disingenuous. While Rex Ryan and others tried to defend the staff by calling it smart management, that excuse doesn't hold water considering the stakes for Cleveland are zero. There's nothing to protect except your long-term investment. And if you really believe in that investment, you let him take the big shots, the risks, and even a few hits. Instead, the Browns treated Shedeur like a glass figurine. Don't drop him, don't stand him too high, don't let him see pressure, don't. But great quarterbacks aren't molded in safe containers. They emerge from fire, from chaos, from being forced to figure it out while 280-pound monsters are trying to take them down. And guess what? Shedeur showed he was ready for some of that. He wasn't perfect. Of course not. He had one interception, but that's football. What he did show was far more important. Pocket composure, playmaking instincts, ball security, real arm talent, and NFL-level poise, the kind you cannot coach. So pulling him after his biggest throw of the night wasn't just strategical, it was psychological. It sends ripples through a rookie's confidence. It tells him, "We'll trust you," to a point. And that point was about 2 yards too short. Now, and this is key, this isn't arguing for reckless game planning. No one's saying throw him into 3rd and 15 seconds with empty backfields every snap. But there has to be a balance. You don't sign up to evaluate a quarterback and avoid evaluating him at the same time. Because here's the real fear. The Browns aren't really evaluating him. They're managing optics. They want to say, we gave him a shot, but keep the playbook on training wheels. They want to act like they're developing a quarterback, while mostly just making sure he doesn't do anything memorable, good or bad. But talent doesn't develop in bubble wrap, and if your coaching staff is this cautious in a 2-win season, what will they do when the stakes are actual playoffs or primetime pressure? You can't pull your quarterback every time things get tight. You can't hide him when the end zone is close. And if you can't trust him now, why should he or anyone else believe that trust will magically show up later? That's not protection. That's prevention. That's delay. And if the Browns don't realize the difference, they're not just holding a quarterback back. They're holding their entire future hostage. Across the NFL, it's not hard to find examples of young quarterbacks being given the one thing every rookie needs to grow trust. Not just the verbal kind in post-game interviews, but real trust, the kind that shows up when the game is on the line and the offensive coordinator puts the ball in the kid's hands and says, "Go win it." And that's exactly what makes Shador Sanders' situation in Cleveland feel even more frustrating. Because when you look around the league, other teams are giving their rookie quarterbacks room to breathe, space to fail, and most importantly, opportunities to lead. Let's start with one of the clearest examples. Bo Nix in Denver. He didn't come in with a Heisman. He didn't have Shador's national spotlight. But from the moment he took his first snap, the Broncos committed to him, mistakes and all. He wasn't yanked after a bad series. He wasn't micromanaged into the ground. He was treated like someone with a future, not just a footnote. Over the span of a few weeks, you could see the growth, confidence, command. They let him make real reads on 3rd and long. They gave him reps in hurry-up situations. And yeah, the losses came, but so did meaningful progress. Most importantly, he felt like the team was actually behind him. That's development. That's how you build a quarterback. Now look at Jackson Dart in Seattle. Another guy who came in with questions. Some thought he needed more seasoning. His footwork needed improvement. But the Seahawks didn't hold him back. They let him play through it. Each week, they added more complexity to his reads. They challenged him. Even when he made costly mistakes, they didn't retreat into safe play calling. They adjusted forward, not backward. Fast forward to now, and he's showing flashes of long-term potential. Because they allowed real, sometimes uncomfortable growth. Compare that to what's happening in Cleveland. Shedeur makes a big throw, gets pulled, finds rhythm in the offense, play calling shifts away from him, shows confidence on the mic. Suddenly, he's a problem. It's like they want the illusion of developing a quarterback without actually taking the chances required to do it. And it's not about talent or tools. Shedeur has both. He's got the arm, the timing, the football IQ. He's played in high-stakes environments since high school. The kid has ice in his veins. But none of that matters if your coaching staff is afraid of letting him actually lead. This is what separates good organizations from bad ones. Not just the ability to draft talent, but the willingness to do everything necessary to nurture it. Think about how teams handled guys like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts in their early years. Neither one came flying out of the gate as an MVP-level player, but their coaches didn't flinch. They didn't yank them after a sack. They didn't immediately question their leadership after a tough press conference. They doubled down on support. They built for the long term. The Browns? They're acting like they're walking on eggshells, like making the wrong call with Shedeur might invite controversy or criticism. So instead of committing, they're choosing the soft path wrapped in excuses about protection, safety, and taking it slow. But here's the part they don't seem to realize yet. Playing it safe isn't always safe. When you treat your quarterback like someone who needs to be shielded from every hard moment, you don't create a poised, battle-tested leader. You create doubt, hesitation, paranoia, and soon enough, those small cracks become defining flaws. Because from the outside looking in, it already feels like Cleveland is hesitating behind the scenes, afraid to go all in, afraid of what happens if Shedeur succeeds too fast or fails too publicly. But that's the risk you take with any rookie. The best franchises lean into it. Look at CJ Stroud and what the Texans did for him last year. They trusted him, even when protection broke down. Even when he had nothing but a rookie-class WR core and a defense that couldn't stop a nosebleed, they let him grow through it. And now, he's one of the most electrifying young players in the league. Why? Because he was allowed to actually become a quarterback, and that's what's at risk here. The Browns don't have the luxury to keep missing on quarterbacks. Their history is filled with false starts, busts, and guys who never got properly developed before the team moved on to the next shiny prospect. If they treat Shedeur the same way, like some one-year project or marketing experiment, it won't just stall his career. It'll send the Browns back into another decade of miserable quarterback rotations. Meanwhile, other teams are moving forward, quickly. They're drafting QBs and actually committing to them. They're not sheltering them, they're trusting them. Not managing optics, they're developing players. Not walking on eggshells, they're building trenches to protect, not limit. And the gap is already visible. In a few months, we'll start seeing those second-year leaps from other rookies across the league. The question is, will Shador Sanders be one of them? Or will he still be sitting on the sideline, watching the Browns protect him from opportunity? At first glance, this all might look like overanalysis of play calls and press conferences. One throw, two wildcat plays, a rookie quarterback not praising the defense fast enough after his debut. On paper, this looks like normal rookie growing pains. But if you've watched the NFL long enough, if you've seen how franchises either build success or sink silently into wasted potential, then you know what this really is. This isn't just about a game. This is about patterns. Because what we're seeing unfold in Cleveland right now is a pattern that's played out before, not just here, but across the NFL, where a young quarterback with raw talent, real confidence, and massive upside gets dragged down by a fractured support system. We've seen it with talented QBs who had the tools but got dropped into dysfunction. They weren't allowed to lead. They weren't set up to succeed. And eventually, people stopped asking what they could have been and only looked at what they weren't. And if the Browns aren't careful, Shador Sanders will be next. Let's be real about the stakes. Cleveland has not had a true franchise quarterback in decades. Every few years, a new promise arrives and disappears. Not because of a single play, not because of a single coach, but because foundationally, the franchise never fully committed. From Brady Quinn, to Johnny Manziel, to Baker Mayfield, to false restarts, stopgaps, and drama, it's been a carousel of almost. And now, they have a rookie with real potential. The demeanor, the toughness, the command, all the traits people pretend to be looking for. And yet, they're walking down that same familiar path again. They're soft launching him into a broken offense. They're trusting the idea of him, but not the reality. And in a league moving faster than ever, that kind of hesitation isn't neutral, it's fatal. Because here's what success in today's NFL looks like. It looks like organizations who build around their quarterback, coaches who adjust the system to fit the young player, not force him into some outdated scheme. Leadership that supports the player off the field, even when the media tries to spin headlines. A front office that says, "He's our guy. and actually means it on 3rd and goal, on 4th and 2, with the game on the line. Can the Browns say that? Because so far, what we've seen is a franchise managing development, not embracing it. And that's the quiet tragedy here. Shador Sanders didn't come into this league needing to be saved. He came in with poise, maturity, and presence. What he needed was belief, institutional belief. Not just words after the game, not just highlight tweets, but real belief, the kind that shows up in play calls, locker room culture, and long-term strategy. The kind of belief that says, "You're our future, and we're not going to hide you when it gets tough." Because doing that, hiding him, hesitating, hedging it only ends one way. Not with a breakout year, not with a development arc, but with a broken opportunity. And that's not just a failure for Shedeur, that's a franchise mistake, the kind that sets you back 5, 10, maybe even another generation. The kind of mistake this team cannot afford to keep making. Just look at the talent around the league. Look how fast organizations flip the switch when the foundation is real. Baltimore committed to Lamar Jackson and built for him. Philadelphia let Hurts grow from uncertainty into MVP contention. Houston trusted Stroud and got rewarded with a franchise reset. Cleveland has a defense that could carry a contender, a fan base that's starving for direction, a quarterback who, despite outside noise, has shown that he can handle the pressure. So what's missing? Conviction. That's what separates the franchises that rise from the ones that repeat history. And right now, the Browns are standing at the fork in the road. One path leads to more of the same half commitments, organizational noise, and a young quarterback who never gets the trust he needs to grow into greatness. The other path? Full buy-in. Let the kid take risks. Let him make mistakes. Let him own the huddle, the locker room, and eventually the city. Because that's how you build legacy. That's how you shift culture. That's how you break this decades-long cycle of mediocrity that's haunted Cleveland year after year after year. And here's the kicker. Everyone's watching now. Fans, the media, the locker room, veterans like Myles Garrett, even Hall of Famers like Randy Moss, who've called out exactly what's at stake. This is no longer about one game. It's about whether the Browns will finally be the kind of franchise that can raise talented quarterbacks instead of burying them. So now the ball's not in Shedor's hands. It's in the Browns. Your rookie passed the test. Now the question is, can you? So here we are, 2 starts in, and the story of Shador Sanders in Cleveland is already starting to look less like a clean evaluation and more like a cautionary tale in slow motion. The throws? He's shown them. The poise? It's been on display. The hype? Very real. But hype doesn't develop quarterbacks. Reps do. Trust does. Belief does. And that's where things have gone quiet in all the wrong places. Because no matter how much the Browns say they're behind him, actions always speak louder. And right now, their actions aren't echoing belief. They're echoing doubt wrapped in strategy. Hesitation disguised as smart football. But in the NFL, there's no such thing as neutral. If you're not building up your quarterback, you're slowly breaking him down. Whether you realize it or not, you can see it on film. You can feel it in the locker room. And louder than anywhere else, you can hear it in the silence coming from the very people who should be defending Shedeur, but aren't. This is how it starts. Not with a benching, not with a meltdown, just a sideline glance after being pulled, a press conference filled with non-answers. A highly praised rookie suddenly being managed like a liability instead of unleashed like a weapon. And that's the thing about quarterback development. It's not just about mechanics or footwork. It's about energy, culture, identity. Because how you treat your quarterback says everything about who you are as a franchise. And right now, the Browns are sending a message whether they mean to or not. They're telling the NFL and their own fan base, we drafted a guy we're too scared to fully trust. And if that doesn't change soon, they won't just lose a few games. They'll lose a locker room. They'll lose a player with elite potential. And they'll lose the one shot they may actually have at ending decades of quarterback instability. Because no matter how loaded that defense is, no matter how much Myles Garrett can carry on Sundays, it's not sustainable without a leader under center. They have something rare in Shedeur, someone with swagger, talent, fire, and growth potential. Someone who wants the moment, embraces pressure, and isn't afraid of the spotlight. That's not something you coach. That's something you commit to before it's too late. So what's next, Cleveland? Do you stick with the fear? The conservative game plans? The silence in post-game pressers? Or do you step into the fire with the quarterback you drafted and finally stop running from your own potential? Because one thing's guaranteed. If you're still managing optics in a 2-10 season, if you're still sheltering your rookie from momentum he earned himself, if you're more interested in control than growth, then you're not building a franchise, you're just repeating history. And we've seen how that ends before. So choose wisely, Cleveland. The clock is ticking. And your future? He's already on the field, waiting for your next move.